Hi, and welcome to One Simple Recipe, where we're hoping to get you one step closer to better health. My name is Judy Metesky, and I'm a registered dietitian as well as a licensed nutritionist. And I am here today making a very simple cake. This, I think, is going to be your go-to summer cake. At least I know it's going to be mine. It is called a 1, 2, 3, 4 yogurt cake, which apparently in France, this is a very popular cake. And it's one that every kid, I think, makes when they're young because it's just so simple, and it's sort of referred to as a no measure cake. And what you're going to do is you're going to be using yogurt and the container of yogurt as your measuring tool. All right, so it's something really fun and different. It's great to do with kids. I plan to make this with my 1.5-year-old grandson. I think it would be fun. He could help sort of pour things into the bowl. So let's get started. It's super easy. You're going to set your oven to 350 degrees. This cake is going to bake on the middle rack. And it's just your very simple ingredients. And it's kind of a blank canvas because you can add other things to it. We'll talk about that. Right now, it's a 1-bowl cake. No mixer needed. I'm just going to use a whisk. All right, so we have 4 eggs in here already. And now we're just going to go ahead and start adding the ingredients using this 5.3 ounce yogurt container. Now, the original recipe, I looked at a bunch of different recipes. This is from Milk Street. And I'm going to follow sort of the similar, mostly the same recipe that was in the Milk Street magazine that I get. And I looked online, and there are other versions of it, but they're all pretty similar. The only difference is that I think it was originally designed with a 4-ounce container of yogurt. And I find that in my supermarket, unless you're buying kids' yogurts, they're usually 5.3 ounces. So I'm using plain, non-fat Greek yogurt. You could use low-fat. If you want to do whole milk, you could. And you could do Greek or regular yogurt. It doesn't matter. I just usually have the Greek yogurt, so that's what's going in. So it's the whole container, and then we're going to use this 5.3 ounce container to measure everything else. If you just happen to be using a 4-ounce container of yogurt, the measurements all stay the same. You're just going to use that container instead. The only difference was that they changed what you baked the cake in. If it's the 5.3 ounce, which is what we're using, we're going to bake it in a 9-inch cake pan. If it's the smaller 4-ounce yogurt, then they recommend baking it in like a 9x5 loaf pan. Okay, so we have our yogurt in. Now this we would normally just rinse out and dry because we're going to use it for all the other ingredients. However, I have another one that's already ready to go. So now we're going to use 1 container of just a plain oil. I'm using canola oil. This one I'm going to probably be using up. You could just use the vegetable oil. From a heart healthy standpoint, they're all fine. Now my recipe online, I did use olive oil, which if you're really looking at the healthy oils, that would be the top of the list. So it's 1 full container of the oil. So it's about 5 ounces. The olive oil is on my recipe online under judymetesky.com. I used olive oil mostly because I changed the recipe a little bit for this one, just to show you that you can. Online, I used half whole wheat flour, half all-purpose flour, and I used olive oil because olive oil goes really well with whole wheat flour, and I added some orange zest. So orange zest and olive oil and whole wheat flour work really well together. So that's why I did that with that recipe, and just wanted to show you that you can change it up. This is more of the traditional one. I wanted to just to show you that. All right, so we have the 1 container of the oil, and then, oh, you know what I should have done? I should have, to make life easier, you can actually start with the dry ingredients when you're using your yogurt container, because then you don't have to wash it out or dry it out. So now I'm just going to grab a paper towel, wipe this out, because if once you measure the oil out, and then everything's going to stick. So you can actually do the sugar and the flour first, because it doesn't seem to matter the order of the ingredients, because this is such a forgiving cake. All right, so now we're going to go with the sugar, and the sugar is just regular, white sugar, granulated sugar. This is where you can modify it a little bit. It calls for 2 containers of sugar. And again, remember, we are making a cake. This is a dessert, so it is going to be on the sweeter side. However, some of the recipes, and I haven't tried it, suggested that you can reduce the sugar to maybe 1.5 containers of sugar, or even down to just one, depending on if you really want something, a cake that's not quite so sweet. So that would be fine to do if you wanted to do that. I'm okay with the sugar in this. It is a dessert. We're not putting icing on it, you know, so it's still, to me, you know, I feel like it's a little bit lighter in sugar just because we're not adding icing to this, and I'll show you how I'm going to serve it. All right, so we have that. Now I have the 4 eggs in here, so it does take a decent amount of eggs. So there's 4 eggs, the 1 container of yogurt, the 2 containers of sugar, and the 1 container of the oil of your preference. All right, now we're going to go ahead. I'm going to splash this with some vanilla. So this is the only difference in this recipe versus the original recipe, because I just love just a vanilla flavored cake. So I'm going to put some vanilla extract in. It doesn't originally call for that. So anyway, I'm going to add that. Okay, now we're going to add our dry ingredients. So it's just the all-purpose flour, and you're going to use that same yogurt container. Remember, this is like a no-measure cake for the most part. And it's 3 containers of all-purpose flour. And, you know, it doesn't have to, again, be perfect. I'm not going to worry about leveling it off. Just 3 containers of the flour. Let me get a mess here. And again, like on my recipe online, I did do half whole wheat and half white. And I think, it worked really well. If you want to, again, or just, you know, boost the nutritional value. What I like about this cake just in general, though, is that, you know, you get some cakes are just so rich because there's usually a lot of icing and a lot of butter and, you know, maybe even heavy cream. It just depends on the recipe. But with this recipe, it is relatively light in that we're using oil instead of butter. We're not using a heavy icing. You know, we're using a lot of eggs for the leavening of it. So from that standpoint, I kind of like it just as a general cake as is. But if you want to, like I did online, I did even improve the nutritional value a little bit better. Okay, a tablespoon of baking powder, and you don't have to separate out the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients. It all goes in together. And then it's just a half a teaspoon of salt. All right, so you just sprinkle that in. Then you're going to take your whisk, and I'm just going to kind of mix that flour around a little bit on top just to get that baking powder and salt spread out. Now it's just bringing it all together. So it's this easy. Now, if you wanted to, because I did put the dry ingredients in after the wet ingredients, I could have just whisked those wet ingredients first and then added the dry. But because it just almost doesn't matter the order of how you're adding the ingredients to the bowl, it all comes together anyway. All right, so, and then like any cake, because we are using flour, and flour contains gluten, unless you're making this a gluten-free cake, which you could. You should certainly substitute just gluten-free flour blend. You don't want to overmix it, obviously, because we do, you know, you still kind of want a tender crumb, but this is, again, pretty forgiving. I've made this several times, and every time it turns out great. All right, so just a little bit to get some of the lumps out. And that's pretty much the batter, all right? So super easy, 1 bowl. There you go. All right, there's our batter. Now, I'm using a 9-inch cake pan. That's what it calls for if you're using the 5.3-ounce yogurt container, which most of you will probably be using because that's pretty much what our supermarkets carry. In France, the yogurts probably are 4 ounces. Again, European portion sizes are usually a lot smaller than American. So I am gonna take some flour and just coat my pan with it, because this does tend to want to stick a little bit. So I don't normally do this. I usually just spray my pan or use a little oil in the pan. But because this one, for some reason, this cake does tend to want to stick. You do need to flour, or you could cut a parchment round and put that in if you wanted to. All right, so either way. And then we're just going to take this, and it's going to go right in our cake pan. And I'm going to show you, because I made one yesterday, because this takes, I think the original recipe from Milk Street said it takes 50 to 60 minutes to bake. My oven might run hot. I should probably check it, but I pulled it out at 50, the one I baked yesterday. And even that, I thought, I probably should have just checked it at 45 minutes, because I think I could have probably pulled it out a little bit sooner. than that. But anyway, you'll have to check with your oven. So I would say you're going to be baking this anywhere between 45 minutes and possibly 60 minutes, I guess, depending on your oven. I feel like 60 would really, you don't want it obviously to get dry, just like you would in any other cake. All right, so just going to even that out. And there's our cake in our cake pan. This is going to go in the oven. I didn't turn my oven on yet, so I'll put it in a little bit. I just wanted to show you the one that I did yesterday. All right, look at how nice and high it gets. It really does puff up because of those 4 eggs and that tablespoon of baking powder. It has a lot of leavening ability, so it does rise, and it's pretty dense. It's not dense. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a pound cake. It's sort of a cross between a pound cake and just a regular like white cake. But what I love about this is because you can use this almost like the base for like strawberry shortcake or any kind of summer dessert that you might want to put fruit with it, whether it's peaches or other stone fruit. I just put it here on a plate with some strawberries and some blueberries, and I have like here I have my little shaker of powdered sugar. Can just do just a little topping of some, powdered sugar on top. And I would even do that maybe on the top of the cake. Just, you can put some powdered sugar on the top of it if you don't want to keep it lighter without being too sweet. You could certainly do a little bit of whipped cream, obviously, if you wanted to, or even a little bit of ice cream. But if you want this on the lighter side, I think serving it with some fruit, it's just so pretty. I mean, look at that. And it couldn't be easier. So if you've got kids in the house, definitely make this with your kids or have them make it for you. Even better, right? So nice, and let me just get a little piece here. Nice and nice. That's a nice crumb. It's really good. This one, the one I made, this one I added some lemon zest, a whole lemon, the zest of a lemon. I added the juice of the lemon. So this is a little bit of a little lemon undertone to it. Not a lot. It's pretty light in the lemony flavors. I could have used a little more. I did one zest, and then, like I said, the recipe online is using orange zest, and I think I might have used a whole orange as well as a lemon zest in that one to make it more citrusy. And I just swapped out the oil and a little bit of that flour for whole grain flour. All right. I'd love you to give it a try. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4 yogurt cake, referred to as the French yogurt cake. It's a no measure cake, and it's really kind of fun. And I think kids will get a kick out of it because you're doing everything in just using this one container. All right, stay well till next week, and I'll see you soon. We'll be back with some more summer treats and some light summer desserts throughout the next couple of weeks. All right, stay well.